Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz. This is the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over all the Week 15 games of the NFL season. If you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your football picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, you can always find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Week 15 of the NFL season. We start with the Thursday Night Football game between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. This game on Prime Video, it's going to be the Niners as 3.5-point favorites. Total is at 43.5. Yeah, I'm looking at the total in this game, and I'm going to take the under in this one, as the Seattle Seahawks run game has just kind of disappeared lately. I know they've had some injuries to their offensive line and their running back group as well, but, even when Kenneth Walker has been in the lineup, you look at the last 4 games for the Seahawks run game, under 100 rushing yards in each of those games, most of those games under 3 yards or under 4 yards per carry, and the offensive line starting to give up a lot more pressure to Geno Smith, and he struggled because of it. You look at last week's game against the Carolina Panthers, 21 of 36 Geno Smith was. He had the Seahawks suffered 3 sacks in that game. They only had 46 yards rushing, so I worry about this offense facing off against one of the best defenses, I think the number one defense in the NFL, in the San Francisco 49ers, who they've had some injuries defensively, but they've kind of played through it. And they played very well defensively, basically from start to finish of this year. Only that one game against the Chiefs where they gave up those 44 points, and then you could argue that game against the Falcons where they also struggled. I mean, the last 6 weeks, they've held their opponents to under 100 rushing yards. The secondary's been sharp. Now, they haven't got as much pressure on the opposing quarterback as I'd like to see from them as of late, but I still think they'll be able to get to Geno Smith here, make his day a lot harder in this one. Even at home, I don't love the Seahawks offense. Brock Purdy still in at quarterback for San Francisco. We know he's done well so far, but he is a backup quarterback for a reason, actually a third-string quarterback going into the season. So, I do think he's going to be limited in what he can do in this game. I like the under in the Niners-Seahawks game to start the week. Next up, we see the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Minnesota Vikings. This one's going to be your first of 3 games on Saturday. So we have a Thursday night game, 3 Saturday games, and then a Monday night game, and of course the rest of the games on Sunday. This one, 1 o'clock Eastern on Saturday. Vikings laying 4, total at 48.5. It's just not easy to lay points right now with the Minnesota Vikings when you just look at how bad that defense has been. And yes, their strength of schedule has been pretty tough lately. They played some teams either in playoff positions, winning records, or teams that are pushing for a playoff spot like the Detroit Lions. But the Vikings have given up over 400 yards in each of the last 5 games, over 450 total yards in 4 of those 5 games, and over 300 passing yards in each of the last 5 games. It's tough to back a team like that, especially when you have to lay more than a field goal. I know the Vikings are the much better offensive team, and they are playing at home, but the offensive line has struggled. Kirk Cousins is taking a lot more pressure lately, and the offensive overall has been inconsistent. Last week, they put up 400 yards, but that was against the Detroit Lions. We know not a very good defense. I think the Colts defense much better. So, I wouldn't want to lay points right now with the Vikings, and I know it's not easy to take the Colts these days when you look at how bad that offense has been, and you look at that final score in their most recent game, 54-19, but you got to look at that game. It was a much closer game, in my opinion, than the final score suggests, as it was a 3-point game with 3 minutes left in the third quarter. All of a sudden, the turnovers piled up, short field position for the Cowboys over and over again, and they put on a ton of points late in that game, but you look at just the total yardage, they only got outgained 385-309 on the road in a primetime spot against a very good Cowboys team. Now you're on a bye week, off a bye week. I think the Colts will be good enough here to at least cover this number, maybe even pull off the upset, but I'm going to take my more than a field goal here, plus 4 points, 4.5 at some spots as well, so shop those numbers. Give me the Colts. Next up, it's the second game for Saturday's card. It's the Ravens and the Browns. The Browns are currently laying 2.5 points. Total is at 38.5. Now, I say currently because we're still waiting to hear the news with Lamar Jackson. They mentioned that he may be available this week. I highly doubt it. They also mentioned last week that he might not be available till Christmas Eve or even after Christmas Eve. So just kind of, we're waiting to see those official news, and the line will certainly change if Lamar does play or does not play. But with the Browns being favored here by 2.5 points, we can kind of infer that he's not going to be able to go. And even if he does play, I like the Browns in this game, whether Lamar's playing or not, honestly, because you look at the numbers in the first matchup between these two teams, that was with Lamar Jackson in the lineup. The Browns outgained Baltimore 336-254. Even though they lost the game in the end by 3, they played very well defensively, holding the Ravens at 3.6 yards per carry. Not an easy thing to do. This is a team that runs the ball well with or without Lamar Jackson in the lineup. And last week we saw the Ravens earn 5.1 yards per carry on the ground, 215 rushing yards against the Steelers, but I don't think that's going to be the case in your second straight road game against the Browns team that's already proven they have a pretty good defensive game plan against the Ravens. And, even though Deshaun Watson, to me, has not been very impressive at all, I still think the Browns have a good enough run game, a good enough offensive line to put up some points in this matchup. It's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. It's why we see the total set below 40, but in the end, I like the Browns to grab the win, and I'm going to lay the points right now. We'll see where the line goes by the end of the week if we get some more information on the quarterback situation. Next up, it's the Dolphins and the Bills. This one, the Bills are laying 7.5 points. Total is at 42. The final game for Saturday's card. I'm leaning towards the under. The Dolphins' offense is not in good form lately, struggling to run the football and really struggling in the passing game as well. The offensive line is not held up, and there's back-to-back weeks where they've scored 17 points. Now your third straight road game against a very good Bills defense in a very tough weather environment and a tough road environment to begin with. And it's going to be 28 degrees, pretty windy as well in Buffalo. We saw the Bills last week struggled themselves offensively in that Buffalo weather. Only 20 points of offense and only 232 total yards of offense. So to me, I don't know where the points are coming from. I know the Dolphins' defense overall has struggled against the pass, but I don't know if you're going to be able to pass the football too much in this game. Even beyond the weather, I just don't like the current form that the Dolphins are in offensively. The Bills are coming off a rough performance themselves. I know it was against a good Jets defense, but I'm going to take the under here. I think the Bills win it. I think they win it pretty convincingly, but I like the under in this one as well. Next up, we see the Saints and the Falcons. This one, the Saints are laying 4 points. Total is at 43. I like the over in this game. A little bit of a contrarian play is when you look at both of these offenses in the last 5 games or so, they have struggled, but I actually saw some really positive signs for the Saints offensively in their most recent game against the Bucs, and they only put up 16 points. They were under 300 total yards, but Andy Dalton was 21 of 29. His receivers had a few really key drop passes in that game that could have led to touchdowns, scoring drives, and the defense for the Saints really folded down the stretch in that game against Tampa Bay, and I wasn't impressed at all. Tom Brady basically had his way at the end of that game as they were down by two scores. The Bucs were. They found those points pretty easily, and I think the Saints defense is in rough shape, but I think the offense is underrated in this spot. The total's set around 43. I think it's actually a little bit too low. The Falcons' offense at the beginning of the year was scoring a lot of points. They were running the football very effectively. They played a pretty tough schedule as of late just in terms of the defenses that they faced, and they've struggled because of that. But I think the offense is a much better showing in this spot. I don't really trust either of these defenses, so give me the over in Falcons-Saints. Next up, we see the Lions and the Jets. This one, the Jets are favored by 0.5 point at some books, 1 point at other books. I'm seeing the Lions actually favored at FanDuel right now. So the line's kind of all over the place in terms of the spread. Total is at 44.5. We're still waiting to see who the Jets are going to be officially starting at quarterback. But really, I like the Jets and their defense in this spot to hold up well and earn a really important home win. The Lions are red hot right now. There's no doubt about that. But you got to look at some of the teams that they played. They beat the Bears. They beat the Giants, the Jaguars. Not the greatest of defenses. And then the Minnesota Vikings, yes, that's a very good Vikings team overall. But we know the Vikings defense has not been very sharp. So no surprise there that the Lions were able to exploit that. The New York Jets defense has been good and pretty consistent all year long. And coming off a game against a very good Bills offense where the Jets only gave up 232 total yards, and that was in a game where their quarterback went down. It was a tough spot for them overall. They were able to cover the number, getting around 9 points in that game. They only lost it by 8. So I like the way the Jets defense has played. In the last 6 games, they've held their opponents to under 300 total yards in 5 of those 6. The Lions are very tough, but I like Jared Goff when he's at home. Don't like him when he's on the road. You just look at his splits from home and road splits. Not very good for Jared Goff away from home. So give me the New York Jets here on the money line. Next up, it's the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Houston Texans. This one, the Texans are 14-point underdogs. Total is at 49. We saw last week the Cowboys were laying 17 points around against these Texans, and the Texans almost pulled off the outright upset. It just goes to show you how hard it is to lay this many points, double-digit, over 2 touchdowns or more in the NFL. And we even saw the Chiefs a few weeks ago. They were laying 16 points, 15.5 at some books against the Rams. You either won with the Chiefs by 0.5 point or you pushed. And it just goes to show you, even though the Chiefs dominated that game, they outgained them by almost 300 yards or 250 yards. It still is very tough to cover these big numbers in the NFL, and because of that, I'm going to take the points here with the Houston Texans. There is no doubt that the Kansas City Chiefs are the far better team, but 14 points is a lot of lumber to lay in a professional sports league like the NFL. In college football, we see these, these ranked teams play some weaker opponents all the time, and they run up the score, 20, 30 plus, 40 plus victories. But in the NFL, it's just not easy to come by. And we even see any given Sunday, sometimes these underdogs show up and earn the outright win. I thought the Texans deserved to win that game last week. They couldn't get there. I think they do enough here to cover the number. Probably an 11-point, 10-point Chiefs win. They win it easily. I think the Texans cover, though. So give me the points here with the Houston Texans. Next up, it's the Chicago Bears taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles are big favorites here, laying 9 points. Total is at 49. I like the over here. This Eagles offense is red hot. 48 points last week against the Giants, 35 the week before against the Titans, 40 against the Packers the week before. The Bears defense has not been very good lately. We saw them struggle mightily against the Packers. They gave up 31 points to the New York Jets of all teams the week before. They're on a 6-game losing streak. The offense has been hit or miss. When Justin Fields has been healthy, they've been able to run the football well, and we even saw in their last game, they had 409 total yards, 6.2 yards per carry. Justin Fields is really developing into a solid quarterback, and the Bears should be fine in terms of their franchise's outlook in the next few seasons, but their defense is not in good shape. I think the Eagles score 30-plus in this game. Again, I think the Bears can chip in a few touchdowns themselves. I like the over in this Eagles-Bears game. Next up, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Carolina Panthers. This one, the Panthers laying 2.5 points. Total is at 38.5. Last week we were on the Panthers. We were getting 4 points in that game, and they earned the outright win. But I'd much rather take the Panthers in the underdog role, even when they're playing at home here against a Steelers team that may be without its starting quarterback, as Mason Rudolph has been taking some first-team reps in practice at quarterback, and it does look like he will be the guy to go, and we'll have to see the official news by the end of the week, and this line will certainly move because of it. But right now, I think this is a kind of a coin flip game, so I'd rather have the 2.5 points, and maybe if we can get this to 3, take the 3 points as well with Pittsburgh in a game where I think either team has a shot to win it. The Pittsburgh Steelers defensively have been pretty good this season. The offense, hit or miss, but I will say at least the offense has been decent enough to earn over 300 yards in each of the last 7 games. Now, a lot of that's been because Kenny Pickett, and we'll have to see if he's able to go. Doesn't look like it, but I still like the fact that the Steelers' offensive line has held up well. At times, they've been able to run the football well, and the Panthers are really, no great team. They've won their last 2 games against the Seahawks and Broncos. Doesn't really impress me too much. I like what I saw from them last week, but overall, I don't think they're good enough to be laying points against most teams in the NFL. So I'm going to take the points here with the Pittsburgh Steelers, see if we can get it up to a field goal. Next up is the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cowboys 5-point favorites, total at 47.5. I like the Cowboys offense. I think it's in good form right now. In the last 6 games, 5 of those 6, the Cowboys have earned over 400 total yards. And with most teams, when you tell me that in your last 3 games defensively, you gave up 20 points, 19 points, and 23 points, I'd say it's most of the time a big win for the defense. But when you look at the opponents, the New York Giants, the Indianapolis Colts, the Houston Texans, not very good offensive teams, at least for the Giants' case as of late, and for the Texans and Colts all year long. To give up 23 points and 327 yards to the Houston Texans, I'm a little bit concerned by that, especially when you look on the other side, the Jacksonville Jaguars coming off a game where they had one of their best offensive performances I've seen from them really in the last 5 years or so, and Trevor Lawrence could be his best game of his NFL career thus far. 368 total passing yards, 36 points, and 428 total yards of offense. It was a dominant showing by the Jaguars offensively. Now, they were certainly helped out a bit by the Titans turning the ball over left and right. 4 turnovers. The Jaguars were +4 in the turnover differential, but still, 428 total yards. Really impressive stuff for the Jags, and I think they're going to be able to exploit a secondary for the Cowboys that gives up a lot of yards and gives up a good completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. Last week, 20 of 27, the Texans quarterbacks were against the Cowboys, and Dallas, a team that's known for getting a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks and feasting on bad offensive lines. They had no sacks last week at all against the Texans. That concerns me quite a bit. I think the Cowboys score plenty of points in this game. I don't like the way the Jaguars defense has been most of the year, and I think they benefited from those 4 turnovers, that +4 turnover differential. But I still think the Jaguars are going to chip in quite a few points themselves, keep this game competitive, and I like the over in the Cowboys-Jaguars. Next up, it's the Cardinals and the Broncos. The Broncos are 3-point favorites. Total is at 36.5. Man, we got a great game on our hands in this one. It's a shame they couldn't move this one to primetime. Sunday Night Football, this would be perfect for a primetime game. But, the Broncos, this is a game that there's no way I'm watching it. There's definitely no way I'm watching this game. Probably not going to be betting it either, but if I had to, I would take the Broncos in a lean here. You just don't know what you're getting from Colt McCoy. Kyler Murray, unfortunately, out for the season with that injury on Monday night, and Cliff Kingsbury certainly on the hot seat right now, but so is Nathaniel Hackett. So both coaches are going to be looking to win this game to try to save their jobs. There's plenty of players on both teams that are looking for jobs for next year, so it's not like these teams are giving up. Definitely there's no giving up in the NFL, in my opinion. But, I just think the Broncos have the better defense. Certainly didn't look great last week, but that was against the Chiefs. So not many defenses have looked good against the Chiefs this year. I give the Broncos credit for actually showing up a little bit offensively in that game, putting up 28 points, covering the number in the end. I think they're in better form slightly. Don't like the way either teams are playing, but if I had to take a side, I take the home team laying a reasonable number. So give me the Denver Broncos here in a very, very slight lean. Next up, it's the Titans and the Chargers. Chargers 3-point favorites. Total is at 47. I'm going to lean towards the under in this game. The Chargers' run defense has not been great this season, but I would say that probably had its best week in a long time last week against the Dolphins, holding Miami to under 100 rushing yards, while the Titans have had some issues with their offensive line. They're turning the ball over left and right, and when you don't have a consistent passing game, it's tough to put up points consistently. It's tough to move the ball consistently. In the last few weeks, the Titans' offense has not been good at all, and even last week where they were -4 in the turnover differential against the Jacksonville Jaguars of all teams. I don't really trust this Titans offense going on the road against the Chargers defense that's in good form. Last week, probably their best defensive showing all season long, holding a very good Dolphins offense to 17 points. I do think the Chargers also have some problems themselves with their offensive line, giving up at least 4 sacks in the last 4 games. We know the Chargers have not been able to run the football at all this season. Only 3.7 yards per carry on the ground, 84 rushing yards per game. So give me the under in this Titans-Chargers game. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bengals are 3.5-point favorites on the road. Total is at 44. The Bengals are in great form. There's no doubt about that. They're on a 5-game win streak. They're covering spreads left and right. But where I have some worries with the Bengals is when they play away from home. When you just look at the numbers beyond their records, 4-3 on the road straight up, 5-1 at home, so much better record at home. But when you look at the points per game and the yardage, both on offense and defense, you look at home, 29 points per game, one of the better offenses in the league, and only giving up 18 points per game at home as well. On the road, the defense has been okay still, only giving up 22 points per game, so a little bit of a jump. But the offense is scoring 6 points less per game, 23 points per game on the road. And the yardage is a really big difference, especially on offense. Earning 433 total yards per game at home, only 319, so more than 100 yards difference on the road. Their offensive line is not held up away from home. It's also, the run game has also struggled, only 3.7 yards per carry on the road. The defense giving up 361 total yards on the road, 297 at home, so that's another 65-yard difference in terms of your defense, so in the wrong direction. So I wouldn't want to be laying more than a field goal. I know the Buccaneers have been real disappointing this season, and a really ugly game last week against a backup quarterback in Brock Purdy and the Niners, but I think getting back home here, really a big game for the Bucs. They are currently leading the division, but that could all change with 1 week. I like the Buccaneers in this game at least to cover the number, and I think they have a good shot at winning this game outright as well. Next up, it's the New England Patriots taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Patriots 1-point favorite. Total is at 44.5. Now, the Patriots defense has been good this season for the most part, but I will say I think it's beatable, especially as of late. It hasn't been in the best of form, and on the road here, where the Patriots numbers at home defensively have been much better than on the road, I think the Raiders can score some points in this game, and it's definitely, the Raiders' offense has not really been the problem for most of the season. We've seen the Raiders have big leads, score 24 points per game, which is not too shabby, 28 points per game at home. But they've just had issues holding those leads. The defense has struggled in the most important parts of the football game, last week included, where the Rams basically needed a miracle to win that game, and they found a way with Baker Mayfield only being on the team for 24 hours. He led the game-winning touchdown drive. It was a long game-winning touchdown drive. But the Raiders' defense, I just have no faith in right now, but their offense should be able to do some damage against this New England defense that has been a little bit overrated lately, the secondary especially. They've been able to get some pressure on opposing QBs, but the Raiders' offensive line has really done a great job lately, both in terms of blocking for the run and the pass. The last 2 weeks, no sacks allowed. The last 4 weeks, only 2 sacks allowed combined. I think both teams move the ball and score some points here, so give me the over in the Patriots-Raiders. Next up, it's the New York Giants taking on the Washington Commanders. This one, the Commanders are laying 4.5 points. Total is at 40.5. Now, the New York Giants, what has happened to the New York Football Giants? They were 6-1 to begin the season. They played a really weak schedule, and they benefited from that. But it looked like they were a shoo-in based on their record to make the postseason. Now they're hanging by a thread in that final 7th seed in the NFC. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. You look at their schedule, at Washington, then at Minnesota. You have to play the Eagles on the road to end the year. We just saw what the Eagles did to the Giants when the Giants were at home. You also have to play the Colts. Where, I think the Giants are going to be favored in that game, but still, I don't know if it's enough to make the playoffs. And this is a must-win for the Giants. I just don't think they get there because it's also a must-win for the Commanders, looking to beat their division rivals, continue their win streak. Yes, they have a tie in there that was against these Giants, but a 3-game win streak. If you take that tie out of the equation, the defense is in good form. The offense put up 411 total yards on the Giants in that game. They're on a bye week, off a bye week. Giants coming off a miserable performance against the Eagles. I can't take the Giants. They've really had issues with the injury bug. At the beginning of the year, they were playing situational football, bend but don't break defense. It's just not working anymore. And on the road here in prime time, I think they lose this one going away. So give me the Washington Commanders laying the points. Next up, we see the Rams and the Packers. This is your final game for Week 15, Monday Night Football on ESPN. The Packers are 7-point favorites. Total is at 39.5. I like the under in this game. I just don't trust this Rams offense at all, even with Baker Mayfield leading the team to that touchdown drive at the end of the game. We got to look at what the Rams did for most of that game offensively, which wasn't much. And yes, Baker Mayfield didn't have a lot of time to get used to that system, but it's not like Baker Mayfield is this different kind of quarterback now because he played with the Browns and struggled. He wasn't good with the Panthers, and now he's on the Rams team that I think has much better coaching, but the weapons around him, a lot of injuries with this Rams team. Cooper Kupp still out. They have not been able to run the football. That includes last week where they only had 3.2 yards per carry. The offensive line has been miserable in terms of pass blocking. I think Baker Mayfield, more than most quarterbacks in the league, needs a lot of time in the pocket to excel. He just hasn't been able to get that lately, and I don't think he's going to get it this week. The Packers defense is not in great form, but I will say off the bye week, I expect a much better showing. I don't think Green Bay's offense is going to light it up either. The Rams defense has held up pretty well. So give me the under in this Monday Night Football game to end the week. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 15 of the NFL season. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, and don't forget to put your football picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bet, you can find those at Pickdawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.